Hi, it's Lee, and it's been a while. So today I am colouring a postcard from Karolina Kubikowska. I think it's from the Summer Memories pack, but I might have got them all mixed up, so I'm not really sure. It's just some simple flowers, and I actually really just wanted to test out these new Conte Paris pastel pencils that I purchased. I got them on sale at Officeworks if you're in Australia. They were only $1.20 each because the stock is being deleted, and so I have been absolutely busting to try them. Now, I've got to say that generally I'm not a fan of pastel pencils because I'm one of the people that doesn't like the sensation of the chalk. But I was lucky enough at Officeworks, there was an artist there who was buying some, and he was sort of showing me how he used them and whatnot. I kind of got a bit excited when he was showing me what they were like, so I've been busting to try them, so here goes. And I don't know though if I would have bought them if I'd known what a pain to sharpen them would be. Now I do have to admit that I bought 5 or 6 and then I went back, and because they were on sale I went back and bought nearly all of the colours except for the greys and whatnot. So I ended up sharpening these pencils with my old M&R pencil sharpener because I didn't want to ruin my new one, and that got me a little bit of point on it, but there was a lot of dust and they were quite sort of damaged at Officeworks, so a lot of them didn't have any nib on them at all. They break really easily. So I used the M&R to sharpen them, and then I used a blade, an X-Acto knife, to actually sharpen them further. And I've seen online, the artist told me that he uses what's called a grinding stone, and so I've seen online that you can actually get these pastel pencil sharpeners, which I think is what he was referring to, and it's really like a sort of sandpaper on like a little ledge type thing, and you roll the pencil around it to sharpen on. They're not really expensive at all to buy, but here in Australia they're hard to get, and I haven't seen any locally that I can purchase. So I kind of went with this theory, and after I'd sharpened them with the X-Acto knife and with the M&R, I used some of my nail files to actually sharpen them a bit more, and I don't know whether that's on screen or not. And anyway, this worked out just fine, and it was faster with the blade though than rolling them around on my nail files. Anyway, so I thought I would colour the card with the pastels first, and then if I want some more depth I can go over with my Colleen pencils later if needed. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know or not, but Karolina has a new look for Imaginary Friends. It's one of her fantastic books, and it was recently re-released and in a new format with some bit of formatting of the pictures and whatnot. So if you haven't seen that, you can check it out at Karolina's Etsy store or at Decamade, which is a store in Poland, and also they publish Karolina's work. Later on this month she'll also be releasing another product, which is a shadow box of her images. Now I believe from the pictures that I've seen they're loose leaf, but I really don't have a lot of information at the moment. So if you're a fan of Karolina's work, make sure you check out her Instagram for more up-to-date information. Now, as Karolina is words too hard today. As Karolina is Polish, I thought I'd tell you about a Polish mystery. And it's a little bit weird, but not in a gross way. So today, we're going into the forest. In the village of Zanowa, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies to my Polish friends if I'm not. Which is 4 kilometres from the town of Gryfino, West Pomerania in Poland, there's a large pine tree plantation. Now, between the 1930s and 1945, over 400 Scots pine trees were planted. Now, the trees themselves were about 10 years old, or 7 to 10 years old, when planted in this particular forest. And Scots pines, they're also known as Baltic pines. And now that I've seen pictures of their pine needles, I realise that these are the trees that are the inspiration or the reference image that many of our famous artists have used in their colouring books, because they're just so widely planted. Now, the Scots pines are very popular in Poland. They cover nearly 70% of the forests there, and they grow up to 35 metres high with long, straight trunks covered in a thick bark, flaky orange or red when they're young, and then they turn into a scaly grey-brown when they get older, probably what most of us are familiar with when we're colouring in those pine trees in our books. And they've got foliage at the top. They're really quite distinctive. Now, not all Scots pine trees grow up straight and tall, and that's the mystery. In the plantation of Scots pines in the village of Nauzanoa, there are about 100, maybe 200 Scots pines on about a third of a hectare that are not growing straight and tall. They're actually growing at a 90-degree angle, and they're all pointing towards the north. Just about the trunk of the tree, so just a bit above the trunk, it actually starts curving for a metre or more, or 3 to 9 feet for my non-metric friends, and it goes at this angle, and then it returns to growing vertically, just like the other birch trees in the forest that it is surrounded by. Now, I'll put a picture up here so that you can see what I mean about the crooked forest. Now, you could understand if the whole forest was curved like this, but the odd thing is, out of the 400 odd trees, it's only 100 to 200 or so that are like this. And this is the mystery. Why? Now, Scots pines are not naturally known for any curvature of the trunk, and a lot is known about the tree. It's been studied extensively, and it's extremely hardy, with most in Poland aged between 100 to 200 years old. There's actually one in Finland that's estimated to be over 750 years old. Now, it's a really versatile tree too. It can withstand extremes in temperature, like the cold of Finland and Scotland, and it can tolerate a really wide range of soil types and different climates, including those soils that have got low fertility. It's really adaptable to the conditions, and it has a variety of uses too, from medicinal to building to making products. It's a very popular species. The mystery is how on earth and why are these trees curved? Now, there have been quite a few theories about why the trees are curved, but spoiler alert, no one knows at the time of this video, and anyone that may have lived there in the area and have had some knowledge has all since passed away. Now, a pretty popular theory is that Mother Nature has played a role. For example, a snowstorm could have occurred, and the tree trunks could have been bent by the weight of the snow, and there may have been a long spring and the trees started growing, but now they were growing with a curve because of the weight from the snow, and the growth cycle just ended up that way. Now, as one article I read pointed out, it also ignores the fact that there is a forest of straight trees of the same age around the crooked ones, and the trunk would have had to be weighted completely down to the ground if there was this sort of snowstorm. So this theory hasn't produced any evidence either to really support or dispel this theory. The bulk of the theories, though, revolve around some sort of human activity that caused the crooked forest. One theory is that some sort of tool was used by humans to force the trees to curve the way they do. Now, the reasoning for this is that the tree is commonly used in building and furniture making, and if the tree was curved, it would aid in the building of for example, chairs with a curved back on them, and a particular part on a boat. So, timber sailing boats, how they curve up, and those are made with wood. Now, even barrel making for wine, presumably, how they curve around the side. Some say this type of pine, though, wouldn't have really been suitable for that purpose anyway, as other woods are generally better, and usually the wood of choice is an English oak, a hedgerow, and that's usually best for making curved timber. But some people even bend the oak trees so that they grow that way, just so it's easier to make furniture and other products, and then that way they can achieve the curve. But I don't know, you'd have to be pretty precise in order to get that curve, and to get it in the curve that you want it. Like, I guess they have some sort of system where it is completely wrapped around something like a bonsai is, in order to make it grow in a particular shape at a particular degree of angle. I mean, and even then, I guess you would still have to hope for the best, that the tree does what you want. But, I mean, it works with bonsai, I guess, but I don't know. Another theory is that the trees were in the path of an area that was occupied by the Soviet army in 1945. And the way the theory works is that the poor little trees were just ran over by the tanks when they were in their young life. But this theory doesn't really make any sense, because for one thing, there's a whole group of trees that were around them and they're not damaged. And if the trees were only 10 years old, that's really not that big in the world of trees. Like, they're really not that high. So if a tank ran over the tree, they would be completely flattened. And how did the tank sort of get into the middle of the forest and just flatten the trees without any path to them? It just doesn't make any sort of logic, unless the tank dropped from the sky, landed on the trees, flattened them a little bit, but not enough to send them to the ground and completely kill them, but just a little bit. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, another idea is that when the trees had started growing, a group of people, maybe someone with an entrepreneurial spirit, came along and they chopped just the top of the trees to use or sell as Christmas trees. Now, the theory is that one bottom branch, who knows why, was left, which ultimately grew into the main trunk of the tree. Now, this one doesn't seem logical to me anyway. I mean, why would you leave one branch? It just seems weird. And if that happened, why would the trees all grow in that one way? Now, research by forestry experts, they claim that the trunks don't show any signs of having been cut completely. And they did find incisions though, and it's believed that these incisions were made between early 1940 to the mid-1940s. So one theory for the incisions is it was part of a nature construction experiment. Now, this had been quite popular since the 1930s. There was a leading man that was leading this nature construction experiments. It was a German landscape engineer called Arthur Wichula, and he was very fond of using trees in his designs for housing. Now, not in the way that most of us were thinking, like cutting it up into planks and using it for framing, but he was actually using it as living trees. They were walls, and he also liked to manipulate the trees into different shapes and whatnot. Now, his experiments likely meant that you would end up having your very own indoor-outdoor treehouse. Unfortunately, there are no records that indicate that this was part of a nature experiment, either led by Arthur Wichula or by anyone following along with his experimental ideas for housing. So a Professor Creamer, I think he was from a university in the UK, he was actually invited to have a look at the trees, and his theory was that they were cut at a young age, leaving just this one side branch, which later developed into full-grown trees. So, I mean, there is evidence to support that it was incised or cut and one branch was left, but really, why? And the local government actually decided to test out that theory. And in 2021, they collected pine cones from the trees. They planted the seeds at different locations and wanted to see if the pines themselves would grow crooked like the originals. But, I mean, it was only started in 2021, and as yet, the trees are still growing, and it's going to take another 10 or 15 years before we know the results of that experiment. But that one seems to be based on the fact that it might be some sort of genetic mutation in the trees that caused this growth. So far we've got, yes, it could have been incised and one branch chopped off, but we don't know why. And maybe it's some genetic mutation, but 15 years or so we might know if that's the case, but currently we don't know why. There are even some people that suggested the trees were impacted by the Dolan Odra power plant, which is nearby, but that doesn't make sense either because the power plant wasn't built until the 1970s. But that doesn't make sense either, because the power plant wasn't built until the 1970s and the trees were planted in the 1940s, and the tree age can easily be identified by the rings in the knots, so they know it was the 1940s. There have also been some other suggestions, some more far-fetched than others. For example, gravitational pulls has been suggested, that the trees were in some way pulled so that they would grow horizontally with these branches out. It doesn't seem likely because gravity generally goes up and down, as far as I know from the Big Bang Theory, where I get all my knowledge on science. But who knows? There was also the genetic mutation, and they're testing that theory out with the experiment that they're currently running, but this would take some time. And funnily enough, I thought this would be easy enough to identify in this day and age with all the fancy pants gadgets and tech we have, but apparently it's not. And of course, one of my favourite theories is aliens. Of course, it could be aliens. Now, I don't know much about this theory, but what I don't understand is why the aliens would want trees to grow one way rather than vertically. Maybe they wanted to make a landing platform for their spaceship, or maybe they were hovering around and all their alien tech sort of upset these trees and they got squashed down and had to grow horizontally. I don't know. But I do think it might be unlikely. Now, the human intervention with the trees seems to be the most logical conclusion based on the evidence at hand. Now, bearing in mind that the trees may have been forcibly curved by locals prior to the invasion of Poland during World War II. Now, this intervention of a war and then the damage and abandonment to the town may have meant that whoever started to bend the trees may not have been able to return to fell the trees. And it seems odd to me, sitting in Australia, that someone would do that to trees in a forest, because in Australia our trees and forests are really protected. But maybe it was the custom back then, or maybe that was permitted use, or maybe people were worried that they wouldn't be able to produce items due to shortages that come with war times, and they decided to make their own product and curve the trees. I don't really know. But unfortunately, records for the town were all destroyed or damaged during the war, so who knows? The people that may have known are no longer alive. And the town really didn't recover from the war until the 1970s, and by then it was too late to have any local knowledge. And maybe we will never know the mystery of the Crooked Forest. But what we do know is that this is not the only Crooked Forest. There are actually two smaller ones in Poland, and there's something similar in Russia at the Curonian Spit in Oblast, which is called the Dancing Forest. Now, there are not as many theories for the Dancing Forest, though, and many believe the most logical explanation for the trees to be deformed, if you like, in the Dancing Forest is from caterpillar activity. That forest was planted in the 1960s, and although the trees are distorted, and you can see why people compare the two forests, they're really quite different. The Dancing Forest has the trees distorted, really twisted into different shapes and whatnot, like circles and hearts and knots, and nothing like the Crooked Forest, where all the branches just point one way to the north. Most people believe that the trees in the Dancing Forest really were formed that way due to activity from a particular caterpillar that affected the tree's normal growth. But the good news is that you can check out the Crooked Forest for yourself. It is considered a tourist attraction in Poland, and it's actually a protected monument. The best times to visit it are between April and September, when the ground is a bit drier. And if you're going there, make sure you go and grab some colouring books, because as we know, they make great books over there. Now, the forest is easily accessed because it's separated from basically a residential area by a dirt road of 100 metres odd, so a pretty easy walk. And if you can't make it to Poland, you can also see it at home from your couch. It's been featured on the Unexplained on the History Channel. I haven't seen it, but if you have, I'd love to know what your thoughts are and what your theories are. And I'd love to know if you've actually ever been to the Crooked Forest and what it's actually like in person. So that's it for the mystery of the Crooked Forest, and I'd love to know which theory, or if any, you think it might be. Genetic deformation, war tanks, farmers curving the trunks on purpose, aliens, who knows? Now, I do want to say that I haven't been on the channel much lately, and the reason for that is that about 2 months ago I injured my shoulder. And I think if you know me, you can guess how. I was lifting up Buddy, and yeah. So anyway, it's actually not just one shoulder, it's 2 shoulders. So of course, me being me, it took me a month or so to get to the doctor, and I found out that I've got bursitis in one shoulder and tendonitis in the other. And so I'm going to have to get physiotherapy or steroid injections. The doctors did tell me to rest it, and that lasted like 10 minutes before I had to lift up a 30-kilo dog. So resting it and taking it easy just hasn't worked out for me, and unfortunately it's not getting any better. Now, obviously it's my shoulder, it's not my arms or my wrist, and I'm still able to colour. But the thing is, I keep messing up and I keep forgetting that I've got these 2 shoulder problems. And I keep doing stupid things like trying to brush my hair, or put my hair in a hair tie, or take my bra off, or take my t-shirt off. And so I'm forever hurting myself and causing myself pain intermittently, because it only lasts like a minute of like sharp pain, and then it's no big deal. But the big issue is that I am really tired because I can't get to sleep. And so haven't felt like filming because I'm just so tired. And unfortunately, I can't take any anti-inflammatories for it because it interferes with other medication I take. So I have to suck it up or go and get the physiotherapy or the steroid injections. And even though I'm terrified of needles, I have an anxiety disorder. After months of this and not getting enough sleep, I'm probably ready to bite the bullet on that if I can get rid of, some of this unpleasantness associated with these two shoulder injuries. So we'll see how we go with that. But the smoothness of the postcard I don't think is really the most suitable for these pencils. They really need something that's got a bit of tooth that they can grip onto. And I'd really like to test these pencils out with something like an actual pastel paper or something with a little bit more tooth to it. So I think I will print something out on a toothier paper and give it another try, because the postcards are beautiful, but the cardstock is actually quite smooth and it's hard to sort of blend it together and keep it smudge free with just the pencils. And I think if I've got the toothier paper, I can do some hatching and different blending techniques to get a bit more depth there. So that's an experiment that I'm going to try. And again, my apologies for being absent for a while. I'm finding it very difficult, just to film and whatnot without just feeling exhausted and whatnot from, two shoulders causing me unpleasantness. It's nothing compared to what so many people are suffering from, but it's just annoying and it's annoying me no end. But anyway, I hope that I will be back soon and can share some more colouring and maybe some more stories with you. So that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.